This is Shuja Rabbani, and you are listening to the Pod Your Heart Out podcast. I believe that the right to work in a safe and healthy work environment is everyone's human right. A workplace where there is humanity in human resources and a place where leadership leads by example. Join me in today's conversation if you see yourself as an advocate for that kind of workplace. Google is the best employer, or so you might read in some of the headlines out there. I first noticed a little glimpse of Google's work culture when news came about, when there was a lot of news on the news headlines really about the Google walkout, when thousands of Google employees around the world were walking out in solidarity with the multiple women who were sexually harassed by one of Google's executives. Of course, when you're at such a high level of a company, of a multi-billion-dollar company like Google, you are let go with millions of dollars in payout bonuses. Now, that's something that the employees did not see as fair, to basically not just be able to bring justice to people that were sexually harassed, but at the same time rewarding somebody who misbehaved and then letting them go from the company, and they get away scot-free without any accountability. Now, at that level, of course, getting all that sum of money and being let go is not really accountability. But this specific case that I'm going to speak about in this episode relates a lot to, I guess, if you're somebody in human resources who prepares contracts and negotiates with unions, this is something that you would be very much interested in, because on the onset, when you read the story, it seems like a very petty thing that led to a legal case. But actually, it's not, because at the end of the day, when it comes to treatment of employees, whether they are contract-based or full-time permanent employees, whatever the case might be, it is very important that people are treated equally under all circumstances, even if it means when an employee who is contracted asks for a replacement of a water bottle who is working in a environment which requires them to constantly hydrate themselves, then you need to pay attention to that. Let me get into a bit of the details of what happened in this specific story. So around the time of May 2020, Google announced that they were going to handle the pandemic in an honorable way. And they said to everybody that they were going to give bonuses to all employees, including contractors who work in person. And when the time came for the bonuses to be received, they didn't receive anything, all the contract workers, of which this specific employee was one. And when her water bottle broke and she asked for a replacement, in conversation with one of her colleagues who was a full-time Google employee, she noticed that they were already paid, but she was not, and no one even said anything about it. So it kind of had gone under the radar. And every time this topic came up in front of management, they were basically being shushed and told not to talk about this topic, about discussing their salaries with each other. And there was a very good reason for it, because more than 50% of Google's employees are either temps, vendors, or contractors who don't fall into the full-time Google employee contract, which is why they were not getting paid. And flagging this issue was also raising red flags with the management. So management sent out a reminder, a little memo to everybody to say, as a reminder, while this is the standard payout based on hours worked and should be the same for all TVCs, so TVC stands for temps, vendors, and contractors, it is never okay to discuss compensation with your peers. So that was it. And this basically initiated even more suspicion about why are they being discouraged about speaking about something that they were promised much earlier on. Now, eventually, these contract workers were given the bonuses. However, what triggered this legal action against Google was when they decided not to replace her broken water bottles. So her colleague, who was a full-time Google employee, got a replacement and she didn't. And that day she went to Facebook. She was absolutely fed up and went to Facebook, took it to social media, and said, my employer told us who do heavy lifting and manual labor that if we lose our bottle of water or cap on our water, that they will not be replacing it during a pandemic, but you can take extra breaks to go get water. So just stay thirsty and be glad you have a job, LOL. And don't even think of hazard pay. This is why I joined whatever union that she was talking about. And the following day, she was met with the management team from Google and let go. Basically, told that your Facebook post was in violation of the non-disclosure agreement and that she was a security risk and needed to hand over her badge and laptop immediately and to be escorted offsite. When she complained to the union, they took up her case and eventually the case was won. And what they mentioned was, I'm going to quote this directly from the article, people who work in warehouses and data centers for these trillion-dollar companies are tired of even their smallest rights being trampled on. And they're realizing that the companies aren't listening to their workers. So we're going to make them, unquote. It's interesting that something as small as a water bottle, which is not being replaced for a worker who is a contractor, can lead to a legal case which can actually be won. So for those of you who are working in companies where you are writing contracts, negotiating with unions, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear what you believe is happening here from your perspective. Is it common best practice that contract workers who come in from a third party are not treated the same way as full-time employees that are employed directly by the company? I'd want to hear from you what you think is happening, a reflection from your end. How would you handle this situation? I think, something as small as a plastic bottle that's been broken and needs replacement is a very easy fix. And why did it go ignored and why there was no replacement? There was just absolutely no reason for this to happen. So please feel free to pod your heart out and I'd love to hear from you.